There are very few shows in recent television history that managed to do what Last Man Standing did. Week after week, season after season, it pulled families to their couches on Friday nights and gave them something increasingly rare in modern entertainment: a comedy that felt genuinely warm, consistently funny, and grounded in the kind of everyday family drama that real people actually recognize. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't trying to be cutting edge. It was simply a show about an opinionated dad, his wife, his daughters, and the beautiful chaos that comes from people who love each other but see the world very differently. And audiences rewarded it for that. Millions of them, every single week. But here's the thing about beloved shows: the more you love them, the more you notice when something changes. And Last Man Standing changed quite a bit over its run. Faces that viewers had grown attached to suddenly disappeared. Characters who felt essential to the fabric of the show were recast or written out entirely. And when the show was cancelled not once but effectively disrupted twice, fans were left asking the same question over and over again: what actually happened behind the scenes? The official explanations never quite seemed to tell the whole story. The real answers involve contract negotiations, Hollywood politics, skyrocketing production costs, career ambitions, and one of the most passionate fan revival campaigns television has ever witnessed. So let's go through it all, character by character, and find out the true reasons why the main cast of Last Man Standing kept changing. To understand everything that followed, you first have to understand how Last Man Standing came to exist at all, because it was far from a sure thing. By 2011, Tim Allen had been off television for years. His last major TV role had been on Home Improvement, which ended back in 1999. In the decade-plus that followed, he had focused on films, voice work, and live performance. He was not actively looking to return to the grind of network television. When the opportunity came, he turned it down. More than once. The show's creator had pitched him a character named Mike Baxter, a rugged, outdoorsy, traditionally minded man who worked at a sporting goods chain and constantly found himself outnumbered by the women in his family. Allen's hesitation was understandable. The setup sounded, on the surface, uncomfortably similar to his old character Tim, the toolman, Taylor, another opinionated, tool-loving man surrounded by family who rarely shared his enthusiasm. Allen reportedly declined the role 3 separate times before finally agreeing, and the thing that changed his mind was not money alone, though the money was certainly significant. What ultimately brought him on board was creative control. He would not just star in the show, he would serve as an executive producer with a genuine voice in how stories were told and what directions the show would take. That condition would prove enormously important as the series progressed into increasingly political territory. ABC had ambitious plans for the series. They wanted it to serve as a kind of modern spiritual successor to the classic family sitcoms of earlier decades, something with genuine ideological friction built into the family dynamic, where a conservative patriarch regularly had his worldview tested by a household that didn't always share it. They placed it on Friday nights, traditionally one of the hardest slots to succeed in on network television, and banked on Allen's popularity to overcome that obstacle. It worked. When the premiere aired in October 2011, more than 13 million people watched. That was ABC's biggest comedy debut in years. Over the next 6 seasons, the show consistently averaged over 8 million viewers per episode. For a Friday night program on a broadcast network in the streaming era, those numbers were remarkable. Which is precisely why what came next was so jarring. In that first season, the Baxter family had a particular energy that viewers connected with quickly. At the center of the daughters' storylines was Kristen, the eldest, played by Alexandra Crosby. Kristen was written as a young single mother who had her son Boyd as a teenager and was now navigating the complicated reality of living at home with her parents while trying to figure her life out. She worked as a waitress. She struggled. She had sharp, funny exchanges with her father. And Crosby played her with a naturalistic quality that felt genuine rather than performed. Then Season 2 arrived and Crosby was gone. The official explanation from the network cited creative differences, which in Hollywood is typically a phrase that means a great deal more than it says. The fuller picture that emerged pointed to a deliberate decision by the show's producers to reposition the Kristen character. They wanted her older, more established, more capable of engaging Mike Baxter on the level of politics and social issues rather than simply being the struggling young mom finding her footing. That creative pivot required someone different in the role. There was also a more practical, if somewhat awkward, consideration. Crosby, who played the eldest Baxter daughter, was actually younger in real life than Molly Ephraim, who played Mandy, the middle sister. For producers trying to maintain a believable family dynamic, that age reversal created an uncomfortable visual inconsistency. The replacement they chose, Amanda Fuller, was older than both, which aligned more naturally with the birth order the show was trying to sell. Fuller brought a different energy to Kristen, sharper, more confident, more confrontational, and over time she became an integral part of the show's identity. But for viewers who had bonded with Crosby in that first season, the change landed like a cold splash of water. The story of Ryan Vogelsong, Kristen's ex and the father of her son Boyd, is really two separate stories that happen to share a character name and a face that changed between them. When Ryan first appeared in a Christmas episode during the first season, the role went to Nick Jonas, who was 19 years old at the time and whose main value to the production was the media attention his celebrity would generate. The character as written was thin, an immature, absent young man who had run from his responsibilities and was only now awkwardly reappearing. Jonas played him as nervous and underdeveloped, which matched what the script asked for. Fans noticed him. Ratings got a bump. And then that version of Ryan quietly disappeared. When the show's second season brought a new showrunner on board, there was a clear desire to transform Ryan into something more narratively useful. A scared teenage father who runs away is a one-note character. A politically progressive young man who genuinely believes in his worldview and is willing to argue it against Mike Baxter's equally firm conservatism, that's a recurring engine for comedy and drama. Jordan Masterson stepped into the role and delivered exactly that. His Ryan was intelligent, principled, occasionally infuriating to Mike, and fully capable of holding his own in an argument. The character grew over subsequent seasons in ways the Jonas version never could have, eventually becoming a small business owner whose cannabis operation inadvertently turned him into the kind of capitalist entrepreneur he had always criticized, a running joke that Tim Allen's character found endlessly satisfying. By the spring of 2017, Last Man Standing had every reason to expect renewal. The ratings were strong. The audience was loyal. The show had found a comfortable rhythm. Then ABC dropped the cancellation announcement and the entire entertainment world did a double-take. The network's official reasoning was a programming restructuring decision. They were moving away from comedies on Friday nights and shifting toward fantasy and science fiction content. It was a practical business explanation that satisfied almost nobody. The timing felt suspicious to many observers, coming just 2 months after Tim Allen had made controversial remarks during a late-night television appearance, comparing the experience of being openly conservative in Hollywood to living under a repressive political regime. Whether or not ABC's decision was influenced by that moment, the perception that it might have been spread quickly and widely. The cast did not hide their feelings. Allen expressed on social media that the cancellation had blindsided him completely. His television wife Nancy Travis was openly emotional in her public statements. A cast member who played the family's friend and business colleague hinted strongly in interviews that the political atmosphere in Hollywood may have contributed to the decision. The sense of injustice was palpable, and fans absorbed it and responded accordingly. What followed was one of the most visible fan campaigns in recent television memory. Within a single day of the cancellation announcement, a petition demanding the show's return gathered over 400,000 signatures. The hashtag to save the show trended massively on social media. People sent symbolic packages to ABC offices referencing the show's handyman themes. Billboards went up in Los Angeles and New York. Elected officials commented publicly. The energy was extraordinary. Behind the scenes, however, the economics of the cancellation were more complicated than passion alone could resolve. Each episode cost ABC approximately $3 million because the show was produced by a different studio, a licensing arrangement that cut into the network's profit margin in ways that became harder to justify regardless of ratings. When the show's production studio began shopping it to other networks, multiple buyers expressed interest before the studio ultimately decided to air it themselves. On May 11, 2018, the announcement came that Last Man Standing would return, this time on Fox. The decision had been accelerated in part by the commercial success of another revived conservative-leaning family sitcom that had recently returned to massive viewership. Fox saw the same opportunity and committed serious money to making it happen, reportedly around $50 million to bring the show back. The timeline was extraordinarily compressed. The announcement came in May, the premiere was scheduled for September, and the writing staff only began working on scripts in June. Sets that had been dismantled had to be rebuilt from scratch. The production schedule was punishing, with multiple episodes filmed per week to meet the deadline. And then came the casting complications. Molly Ephraim had played Mandy Baxter, the middle daughter, through all 6 of the original ABC seasons. She was a fan favorite, and her chemistry with the rest of the cast had been one of the show's genuine pleasures. But when ABC canceled the show in 2017, Ephraim did what any working actor does when a job ends: she moved on. She signed on to new projects. She built a post-Last Man Standing career. By the time Fox announced the revival, those commitments were already in place and could not simply be set aside. The producers faced a genuine dilemma. You cannot reintroduce a beloved character with a new face and expect the audience to simply accept it without comment. Their solution was to lean directly into the awkwardness rather than pretend it wasn't happening. They cast Molly M. Cook in the role, an actress who looked nothing like Ephraim, and they acknowledged the visual change with humor within the show itself. M. Cook understood that she wasn't there to impersonate her predecessor. She approached Mandy as her own character, deepening the fashion and design ambitions that had always been part of the role and taking on more emotionally serious storylines, including a pregnancy arc that gave her room to show genuine range. The initial fan backlash, captured in a social media hashtag proclaiming her as not the real Mandy, eventually softened as viewers saw what she was capable of, particularly in scenes alongside Tim Allen. The story of Eve Baxter's diminishing presence on Last Man Standing is really a story about what happens when a supporting role helps launch a career that outgrows the show that launched it. Kaitlyn Dever had played Eve, the youngest Baxter daughter, since the beginning. Eve was sharp, athletic, and military-minded, a character whose straight-shooting personality made for excellent comedic contrast with her more fashion-obsessed and romantically preoccupied sisters. Dever was good in the role, consistently good, and fans were attached to the character. When the original cancellation happened in 2017, Dever made a deliberate choice. Rather than wait and hope, she redirected her energy toward film work. That decision led her to a role in a critically acclaimed historical drama directed by one of the most respected filmmakers in Hollywood. From there, her trajectory accelerated in ways that would have been difficult to predict. She appeared in a coming-of-age comedy that earned enormous critical praise and was considered one of the best films of its year. She took a leading role in a prestige television miniseries for which she received nominations from 2 of the entertainment industry's most prestigious awards organizations. Within roughly 18 months of Last Man Standing's cancellation, Kaitlyn Dever had become a genuinely in-demand actress whose schedule was no longer hers alone to control. When the Fox revival began, the show worked around her availability as best it could. Eve's extended absences were written into the story by sending her character to a military academy, a narrative choice that actually gave the character more dignity and purpose than a vague, unexplained disappearance would have. The show's writers found creative ways to keep her connected to the Baxter family even when Dever couldn't be physically present, using technology as a storytelling device that felt organic given Eve's character. When she did appear, her episodes carried extra emotional weight precisely because her time on screen was limited. One particular episode crafted around her specific availability windows focused entirely on Eve's relationship with the next generation of the family and served as one of the more moving installments of the later seasons. By the final season, Dever had added a major prestige HBO production to her schedule, and the demands on her time had grown even more significant. Last Man Standing honored her contributions to the show while making peace with the reality that the actress who played Eve Baxter had, entirely legitimately, become someone whose career extended far beyond the Colorado home of the Baxter family. Fox announced in May 2020 that Last Man Standing would conclude with its 9th season. The show was still performing well. Its viewership numbers made it the network's second most successful comedy. The decision surprised fans and even members of the production team, some of whom had already begun planning what a 10th season might look like, including a potential storyline that would have seen Amanda Fuller's Kristen character take over the family business and transform it in ways that reflected changing generational values. The final season needed something special, and the production team knew it. The idea that eventually captured everyone's imagination was a crossover with Home Improvement, specifically bringing Tim Allen back as Tim Taylor, the character he had played throughout the 1990s, to share scenes with Mike Baxter, the character he had been playing for 9 years. The conceptual appeal was obvious. 2 beloved Tim Allen characters, 2 generations of sitcom history, 1 final episode to tie them together. The execution was considerably more complicated. The rights to Home Improvement belonged to a major entertainment conglomerate, and negotiating permission to use the character required back-and-forth discussions that stretched until almost the last possible moment. The script itself went through multiple complete rewrites as various parties, the network, the rights holders, the original show's creators, and Allen himself, weighed in on how Tim Taylor should be portrayed and what his presence in Last Man Standing's universe should mean. Allen was insistent that the crossover treat his older character with genuine respect and provide a legitimate dramatic reason for the two men to meet. He rewatched old episodes of his previous series to reacquaint himself with the specific rhythms and mannerisms of a character he hadn't played in more than 2 decades. The finished episode wove in references that longtime fans would recognize immediately. Nods to characters, catchphrases, and storylines from the earlier show, while also standing on its own as a satisfying piece of storytelling. It gave the series finale the sense of occasion and emotional completeness that a 9-season run deserved. Last Man Standing was never a perfect show, but it was an honest one. It knew what it was, it knew who it was for, and it delivered on that promise with remarkable consistency across an unusually long run. The cast changes and absences that punctuated its history were rarely the result of simple decisions or single motivations. They came from the messy intersection of creative ambition, financial reality, professional opportunity, personal circumstance, and the unpredictable pressures of making television in an industry that is always changing faster than anyone can fully anticipate. The characters who left did not all leave for the same reasons. Some were replaced because the show wanted something different from a role. Some moved on because their careers had opened doors they would have been foolish not to walk through. Some were there from beginning to end and carried the weight of continuity when others couldn't. What united all of them was that they were part of something audiences genuinely valued. And the fact that millions of people fought so hard to keep the Baxter family on their screens, twice, says everything about what Last Man Standing ultimately meant to the people who watched it.